Gilakasla, Jennifer and family. So you gave me the elk drum that you made at one of your workshops, and you asked me to put a design on it for you. One of the things you stated was you would like it to be behind you when you do your Zoom calls and conference calls on video so people can see the drum. And to me, I looked at it as it had to signify who and what you are. So what I called it was right there, Enter the Shaman, Nature's Warrior, Tom Seawood 2020. Now, the reason why I called that is because knowing you and with you receiving your doctorate on what you do, basically you're there to bring balance into our ecosystems. Your work is to remove invasive species. You work with us in Pacific Balance Marine Management to see that the ecosystems are brought back in balance with licensed harvest for seals and sea lions. So looking at that, I said, okay, I got to put something that represents that and every other aspect of what you do. But also, I had to put your character into it. So I was thinking of different ideas, but when you came to my mother's house, and I think it was in May, and to pick up the button blanket, which is right here, that my mother made for you, and she put the tree of life on there, which is the Kwakwakiwak crest, which signifies the cedar tree and everything in life that cedar gives us, which without ecosystems being in harmony and balance and harmony, such as salmon returning to the rivers to spawn so the bears and other animals can bring the carcasses in to eat them, the carcasses break down to create nutrients for the forests, and it's a proven scientific fact. So everything's tied into the tree of life. And of course, that day when you came to pick up your blanket and you put it on in the front yard, because of this pandemic, we couldn't go in the house. Right there, and I have the photo, I saw what I needed to put on the drum, and that was you with outstretched arms like you were standing in that front yard. But what I saw there was you holding a harpoon for catching salmon, harvest stick that we use with 2 points on it to slam the backs of the salmon to harvest them in the rivers. And also the yew wood digging stick over here that stands up. That digging stick is used for mainly by female harvesters traditionally for harvesting roots like camas bulbs and other things, also for digging shellfish like cockles and clams. And it signifies the strength of a woman. It's what the woman traditionally used as their tool to go forth to help give strength to their families and harvest medicine to correct their families when they're sick. And these are all things that are based upon what a shaman is. The shaman, of course, everyone thinks they're these great gurus that help and do all this different stuff and have soul catchers and practice rituals. Well, yes, in the old days, but in modern days, it comes with what you do. The training that you have in university and other fields, especially in the invasive species and medicinal plants and edible plants, you're just an encyclopedia britannica for that. So that's what I want to incorporate into the design. And right here we have the natural tree of life, a giant cedar tree that's standing, and we can tell it's a giant cedar tree because it has the candelabra up top, the dead parts of the tree that once brought nourishment to the tree, but as it grows, the top dies. And then, of course, the foliage. And down here, when you look at the tree trunk, you'll notice I put a light colored brown elongated triangle, which signifies a bark peel. Some woman goes to a cedar tree when it's about a foot in diameter, 30 centimeters, when it's a juvenile tree, so to speak, and they peel that bark to make baskets and blankets and clothing and sandals and other things. But that mark will stay on that tree until it dies of old age or blows down in the wind, and that's called a culturally modified tree. And this tree here signifies that your teachings not only come from the modern world and teachings and academia, but it also comes from what I know of you, that you have sat and continue to sit with the elders. You seek their knowledge that goes back thousands of years. So like the tree that would stand for 600 to 1200 years and carry that mark of a female harvesting the cedar bark, it signifies the age-old traditional teachings that are carried within you and that you continually seek out. So this part over here with the salmon, it's going up a river to spawn. And right here behind it are salmon berries, which we call in Quaquala, quatum. And that's just showing that you're tied to the seasons and all that bounty. And like I said earlier about everything tied in with salmon and the ecosystems being in balance, well, that's your role in life. That's what Ekame, the creator, blessed you with, to be the shaman, the teacher, the one that brings harmony and balance within our ecosystem. But most of all, you pass on that knowledge to others. And then, of course, because it is shamanistic, the 4 frogs. It was when we opened up during an archaeological inventory one time in the Kwakwaka'wakw territories, a burial box under an overhang on an island deep in the forest. When we opened it up, the 3-strand cedar bark ropes, and lifted the lid off this casket made of red cedar, you could tell it was a shaman that was laid to rest, because there was 4 mummified bullfrogs inside that casket, along with other items. So the frogs, especially in the number of 4, signify that touch, that connection you have to the shaman's world. And over here, I put the magenoch, the killer whale. And as you can see, it's swimming towards you and you're looking towards it. And that's just you and I, our friendship, our bond, because I'm a harvester and a hunter. And when I die and my last breath leaves my mouth and nose, my next breath will come from a blowhole. And that's when my human spirit will be born into a baby killer whale. And I will go with that magenoch, that orca, throughout the underwater realm of Kumakwa's kingdom, the underwater world. So that's what killer whale signifies, that connection between you and I and friendship and sharing of knowledge back and forth, but also the tie to the realm of the underwater world. And of course, with the plants that we see here, the trees, signifies the land connection that you have. And then Quick, the eagle, going down with his talons and his wings back, he's going to catch a salmon or a cod. And that's all about the harmony and balance within the animals from the air, which are the birds and other things, but also with the bounty of the oceans must always stay in the lakes and rivers, so that eagles can always feed and other creatures, and that's what you bring us. So bringing down to this little guy that was peeking, that is Chonahua, the Sasquatch. And as we know with the Omaha Indian teachings I've been taught, they call their Sasquatch Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. And we hear stories about shamans disappearing for weeks, months, even years at times into the forest. Well, what they're doing is they're going to interact with the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, or whatever the tribes call him. And that's where the other tribe, the Sasquatch, passes on the knowledge. And as we know, and we won't get into it in this video, there's a connection there with you, with the Chonahua. So I put that there. And up here, you have an island that has 5 humps. And it represents your husband, you, these 2 humps that are twins, your daughters. And of this one here, representing your son. And it's land with forested trees. And what that signifies is your foundation. And your foundation will always be your family. And then when we look over here to this side here, it's the constellations. And the constellations I put here is that one that signifies the month, the constellation for your daughters and yourself, which is the twins. And that's what that one's signifying. Down here is Orion, with Orion's belt. And the reason why I put that one there is because of your son. He's a boy that wants to be a warrior, hunter, artist. He aspires in mechanics. He's always looking for greater knowledge like his mother and his father. But at the same turn, he's had questions, and he always does. But like we know from the legend and story from Orion, Orion wanted to go forth and kill all of the animals. But one of the other gods corrected him and made him know that you can't do that. You have to keep harmony and balance within the ecosystems, within nature. And that's why when you look up and you see Orion's belt, you're reminded that you're always to do that. You never kill just for the want of killing animals or fish or birds. You only kill or harvest what you need. And that's for your son to have guidance on the drum and to look up. And up here is the Big Dipper. And the reason why I put that one there is it signifies your connection to your husband, because he's guidance. He's always got his wisdom coming in from everything from politics to imagery and the art that I do and discussions that we have. So when you look to the night sky, it's always present. It's always there, and up here where we live. So that's why I put it there, just to signify your husband. But so your daughters don't forget the twins here. That's theirs, to be reminded as you, when you look up in the sun, you see that constellation, and your daughters will in turn. And it'll always signify the connection that you have with your daughters and them, especially being twins, because as the Kwakwakiwak believe, twins aren't even human. They're salmon. They're so special. And that's why I put that on there. And of course, Isla, the sun. The sun is the giver of life, seasons, and everything. And that's what we see in this whole thing, is representation of seasons, which is our world, and how our whole life revolves around all 4 seasons. But those seasons are dictated by days, by weeks, and by months. And that's where the Mukwala, the moon, comes into play. And of course, we know that with the Mukwala, the moon, it's always changing in its shape and its appearance. But of course, it always reminds us of its power when it becomes a full moon. So you're going to notice with your drum, when you sit there at nighttime and you put a light on it and the light's on in the room, you're going to turn it off. And everything that is white is going to glow, including the 2 yellows over here and the white of Mukwala. And the sun, when the lights go off, it's going to glow, but only the full moon. And that's what that represents. But on your blanket, you'll notice that Mom and I chose to put the mountain forms on here. And that's all about you, Jennifer. You come from the mountains, from the Lytton people. So this is your drum. Enter the shaman, a nature's warrior. And that's who you are, and that's what your drum is all about. So I thank you very much for allowing me to do this, and hopefully I captured everything that means something to you. But one of the things you'll notice, Yvonne Atchison, I know you love her art, and that's why I did the water in the river, the water in the ocean, and the sunset, because I know you like Yvonne Atchison. So there you go. There's your drum. Some bad news though. When you did it, it wasn't cured properly. There's a lot of oil in it. It gets very soft just sitting in the garage here for half an hour. And one of the things I noticed is the paints come off easy because it wasn't cured and dried properly. There's a lot of oil content. So unfortunately, I'm going to recommend that you never drum this one. Use your finger, but never use a baton on it. This will be your display drum. So we're going to have to take your son out and your husband and go get a deer or a seal or elk. And we're going to have to make more drums. And we'll do them properly so that you can pound them and sing your songs. And don't forget the medicine wheel. That's what you're all about. Medicine to cure all, our ecosystems, our nature, but most of all to educate humanity that we are on a bad path, and it's leaders like you that will correct it. And of course, the touch of the Indian bead, the blue cobalt representing the British when they came here. And we'll just leave that at that. And of course, because you're a First Nation from the West, I always make sure that I incorporate that little killer whale dorsal fin on your side of your face in red. And that's just to signify that you are part of all of the elements. Spiritual with Pakus, land with the trees and the berries, ocean, lands, and of course the sky. So your drum. Enter the shaman, nature's warrior. Alakulisla. Go in peace. Thank you very much.